Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Are you all able to hear me okay? Yes, okay. My name is Rachel Singer, and I am the Jewish Program Coordinator here at the JCC, and I am thrilled that all of you are able to join us this afternoon, that you all came in the cold, snowy weather. I'm happy that we didn't get as much snow as we anticipated, and I first wanted to say thank you to the JCC's Tuesdays Club. They are the ones who are hosting all of us here today. So we really want to say thank you and give our appreciation. There's a couple of other groups here that are joining us. We have students from York Suburban High School, students from Penn State York, students from Christian School of York, Votech, and some of Bluma's family members. Bluma has lived here in York, and she is a Holocaust survivor, and we are just going to get to hear today some of her story. We have such a short amount of time here this afternoon with her, and I know that she could go on and on with everything with her family and what happened and what transpired after the fact. So I'm not going to waste any time, and I'm going to give the mic over to Bluma, and she's going to start by telling us a little bit of how she grew up prior to the ghettos and the concentration camps. So Bluma, thank you for being here.
First and foremost, First and foremost, I want to thank the JCC for arranging it. I think it's a very important event. I know that everybody of you had heard about Holocaust, but unfortunately some people don't believe it had happened. So I feel my reason for survival is maybe because I am able to talk and tell you the truth. And maybe in a small way we can try to prevent it from reoccurring. As you heard, my name is Bluma Shapiro. I was born and raised in Poland, a city called Białystok, which at that time had 100,000 population, of which 50% were Jewish. I want to tell you right now that a very small fraction of the people, of the Jews in Białystok had survived. Can you hear me? Okay. So, 1941. In 1939, as you know from history, Hitler attacked Poland and made a pact with the Soviet Union at the time, with Stalin, to share Poland. The western part was to be under the German occupation, the eastern part under the Russian occupation. Of course, life has changed immediately. Being under communist regime cut all the privileges of being your own boss, so to speak. So my father had lost his business, of course, and he became a carpenter, and from then on, of course, life had changed tremendously. I am one of 5 siblings. I was the youngest one. The difference between me, my youngest sibling, was only 13 years. So you can imagine how spoiled I was being the youngest child in the family. If I didn't get anything from the oldest, I went to the others, and finally I got it my way. But in 1939, it all changed. I was in school, naturally, and as I said, my father lost his business. He became a carpenter, and all my siblings were married already at that time. I still was in school. The teaching in school had changed as well. Up to now, of course, everything was taught in Polish, and we had 2 foreign languages, which was German and Hebrew. With the Soviet Union occupying the city, all those languages were taken away. We were to be taught in White Russia, Belarusia, and they couldn't find any teachers to teach us the Belarusian language. So we changed into Jewish. So now we had no Polish anymore. It was all taught in Jewish. By the end, the change of the languages was a big privilege afterwards in the war. It came very handy. We'll come to it when the time comes. Okay, so as I said, school had changed, lives had changed under the communist regime. Now, the first thing that my family had suffered was one of my brothers was too rich for the Russian regime, and he was sent out to Siberia. The other thing was that my youngest brother, whose difference between me and him, the youngest sibling, was 13 years, he was drafted into the Russian army. Needless to say that it was very different than the life that we had under the Polish regime. Białystok, my city where I was born, had 100,000 population, of which 50% were Jewish. So 50,000 Jews had perished in Białystok during the war. A little fraction, I understand about 300 up to 500, had survived different circumstances. In 1941, Hitler had broken the struggle that he did with the Russians, and he attacked the Soviet Union. Białystok was southeast of Poland, and the Germans walked in right away after the declaring of war against the Russians. Ost-Prussia was very close to our city, and one day we woke up and there were planes coming down and bombs falling already on the city, and the Russians didn't realize that it's war. It wasn't declared. He just attacked without declaring war at all. The Russians themselves didn't expect it, and we weren't ready for it. Now, immediately as the Germans marched into our city, which was close to Ost-Prussia, so it took only 1 week to come into our city, the first thing they had done was they surrounded 1,000 Jews living around the synagogue and put the synagogue on fire. I want to tell you right now, even among the non-Jewish populations, there were people who were trying to help the Jews. One of them was trying to get some people out of the synagogue, and he too was burned together with the Jews. 1,000 Jews perished into the synagogue. From then on, every day different laws came attacking the Jewish population. The first thing was that every Jew has to wear the yellow star back in front. If somebody found it out, he was shot right on the spot. Jews were not allowed to walk on the pavement. They had to walk in the middle of the streets. And of course, hunger has spread tremendously. In order to help the families to have some more food, we tried to go out and work for the Germans, and thereby having a contact with the non-Jewish population, exchanging some goods from the house, like a tablecloth or linen or anything at all, in order to get some food and bring it to the house. Of course, right away, there were different laws declared against the Jewish population. As I said, start back and forth, you're not allowed to walk on the pavement, you're not allowed to sit in the benches in the gardens. And if somebody was found without all those restrictions applied to himself, he was shot on the spot. Well, hunger spread very much, and people were dying from hunger, from thirst. That continued for about till February of 1942. In February of 1942, they decided that they cannot reach all the Jews because they're spread all over the city. They decided to one part of the city to be assigned for the Jews, and the ghetto was to be built. Labor and work was provided by the Jewish population. A council was organized from 300 members, which the most prominent Jews in the city were members of. And all the orders used to come through the Jewish council. A Jewish militia was organized, and Jews were all from all over the city concentrated in a part of the city that normally would probably hold about 1,500 or maybe 2,000 people. So that almost 5,000 people were to be concentrated in that part of the city. Locally, for my family, the apartment that my parents lived was already in between the section of the city that was assigned to be into the ghetto. But now, of course, my siblings who were married were to come in the place that I lived with my parents, the three of us. Now we have 5 and 6 and up to 10 people living in the same facility. By the end of the ghetto, we had 25 people living in the same apartment that originally was made for 3 people. Naturally now, the ghetto was built by Jews. The material was provided by the Jewish community, and there were 2 entrance exits into the ghetto, and a German militia was sent outside, and a Jewish militiamen inside. Okay. We were not allowed to go out of the ghetto by ourselves. We had to walk in groups. I had worked for a firm who was owned by a German. In order to come to the occupied territories, the Germans were supposed to be members of the Nazi Party. But this man, Mr. Hirschman, who came from Tilsit an der Mebel, which is Ostprussia, was a very devoted Nazi. At one point, the men were doing painting. It was a painting firm. It was in painting, and the woman was cleaning up. I, my sister and sister-in-law were working there in order to have a contact with the non-Jewish workers who will provide us with some more food. We exchanged goods from the house, whatever it's possible to take out, and smuggled the food into the ghetto. Now you were allowed to go by yourself. You didn't have to go in organized groups up to a point. As I said, we were washing the floors after the painters, cleaning the windows and so forth. At one point, the owner of the firm, a certain Mr. Hirschman, who came, as I said, from Prussia, Tilsit an der Mebel, he came in as who knows the German Gothic script. I had taken German in school, and I knew the Gothic script, but was afraid to volunteer. One never knew what would happen if you volunteer. But my elder sister says, well, what do you have to lose? Instead of washing windows and cleaning floors, maybe you'll have a better job. So I told him, yes, I do know the Gothic German script. From then on, I was working in an office, of course, wearing my insignia that I'm Jewish, with a yellow star. And thanks to him, without him knowing it, I became a very professional secretary. And of course, as I said, I had to have my insignia sitting in the office, going out with a German foreman, to different places, prepare the bills for the people that the firm has worked. That was till February of 1943. In February of 1943, the ghetto was closed, and you could not go out anymore to walk by yourself. You had to go in groups. Also at the same time, the towns surrounding Bialystok were made Jew clean. Some of them smuggled themselves in with the people who came from work and told us for the first time we heard about it that there is a settlement. It's called resettlement, but actually it was people who were taken out and taken to the concentration camps. It's 19 February 1942. We had a fete, 1943 already, 42. We heard about the terrible concentration camps that were spread all over Poland. Now, we were not allowed to go ourselves out of the ghetto after February. We had to go in groups to walk. The people who had smuggled themselves in with the groups that came from work told us that it's called resettlement. It's not resettlement. It's the first time we heard about the different concentration camps where Jews were annihilated. Auschwitz, Majdanek, Treblinka, and so forth. Now they also told us that you can build some places that you can hide yourself when the so-called action. The action meant when when the Germans came in and took out the Jews never to return, that you prepare yourself for hiding places, which we'll call bunkers. So anybody who has some places like a double wall or an attic or a basement, prepare some called bunkers, prepare a little food, a little water, just in case. They didn't believe that the Jews in Bialystok will be resettled or taken to the concentration camp. Why? Bialystok was a textile center, and many of the Jews were working to the textile factories. Many of the factories were all inside the ghetto, but the Jews were working and be so-called productive Jews. So they didn't believe. But just in case something happened, you prepare yourself a bunker. My family too prepared a little hiding place in the basement, prepared some food, some water, just in case, not believing that the Jews, the called productive Jews, they will not be liquidated. However, by the end of February, the ghetto was closed, and nobody was allowed to come out at all. And the so-called first action to liquidate the Jews in Bialystok had taken place. And as I said, anybody who had some place to hide went into the hiding place. My family too built a little water, a little food in a basement, and we stayed there. The actions took place from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, during which we were in the hiding place. We heard the screams and the shooting that had taken place outside. After 5 o'clock, it was nice and quiet. They did their job, so to speak, and then it was quiet. So for 3 days, we didn't move out of this hiding place. But on the third day, with the youngsters in the hiding, went out and see what's happening in town. And here we saw already many people killed, bodies lying in the streets, especially children. And we stayed there for 8 days, at which time it was stopped. And of course, whoever was taken out, and the ghetto was made smaller and smaller. Many streets were taken off. So in the place that I lived with my parents, the three of us, by now we have 20 people living in the same facility. By the end of the ghetto, in 1943, we had 25 people living in the same facility. Because streets were taken out and people had to have some place to live, so they joined us. Also, many people were coming from Western Poland, escaping the Germans and come to the place, to the eastern part of Poland, and of course they joined us wherever there was a place to be. People were dying from hunger, from sickness, whatever else, and was decimated the population. There was also a Jewish militia who took care of the order in the ghetto. By the end of February, the ghetto was closed. Nobody was allowed to come in or go out. Now, up to then, we couldn't go ourselves. We went into groups. Of course, people were going out in order to have some contact with the non-Jewish population, exchanging some goods from the house for food. Here's like a tablecloth or curtains or anything else, and exchange it with the non-Jewish population for some food. Coming back to the ghetto, we were not allowed to come anymore individually. We came in groups, and from time to time, of course, they were searching, knowing they were trying to smuggle in some food. 2 incidents that I had witnessed in my group when we came back was that a man was trying to hide some oil in a bottle that he had exchanged for some goods and smuggled into the ghetto. He was searched, and of course the oil was found. He was made to drink the oil, and of course he never got up. Another incident that I had witnessed in my group was a woman who was trying to smuggle some eggs, in her underwear. She too was found out. It was shot right there in the place. In February of 1943, the ghetto was closed and nobody was allowed to come out or go out. It was meant that the Jews were to be transported deeper into Germany because the Russian front was approaching. And here the people from the surrounding little town had told us, it's not resettlement. Those are people who were going taken out and taken to the concentration camps, of which will be first time heard of them in February of 1943, like Auschwitz, Treblinka, Majdanek, Sobibor, and so forth. And again, what do? You go into the hiding places. There was a very famous bunker in the ghetto of Bialystok. It's called the doctor's bunker, because in that building, all the doctors have lived, the Jewish doctors naturally, well lived, and supposedly it was fixed up to last a whole year with food, running water, electricity, and so forth. The bunker that my family had was a little thing in the cellar, and a family, one of the doctors was a family friend, came to the house and said it would be a good idea if Bluma, being the youngest, will have the greatest chance to survive. Your bunker is not, it's just to close your eyes and say it's dark. Let her come to our bunker. The doctor's bunker was very famous in the ghetto, was supposed to have a lot of food, and as I said, running water and electricity and so forth. It wasn't an easy decision by my parents or by myself. I was the youngest child. How can I leave my family? I was never without them. How can I go and hiding without any of my family, my brothers, my sister? But the family decided maybe you'll have the greatest chance to survive because I was young and because the bunker was very equipped for survival. In August of 1943, the 23rd of August of 1943, was the last time that I had seen my family. And I went to the doctor's bunker. And indeed, it was prepared, just as they said, a lot of food and running water and electricity, but also little children were there. In the meantime, in the ghetto of Bialystok was an uprising. Don't ever believe that when they tell you the Jews went to slaughter like animals to the slaughter. The Jews in Bialystok, and not only in Bialystok, all over Poland had fought uprising, trying to kill the Jews, trying to burn the surrounding fences, the surrounding fences of the ghetto in order to allow some Jews to escape into the woods, where the partisans were already very active. Partisans was a group of people, young men mostly, that they had organized some weapons and tried to attack the German trains that were coming and going from Poland. Some of them succeeded and escaped into the woods and succeeded to survive. They're called the partisans. And in the ghettos were uprising, and as I said, Bialystok also has such an uprising. But the uprising and burning the surrounding woods around the ghetto also escaped and joined the partisans. We heard it all being in the bunker, the doctors. And the doctor's bunker was exactly what we had heard. Water and food prepared and electricity, but also her children. And outside, of course, people could hear that. We heard the Germans speaking among themselves. For 8 days we were in that bunker. And we heard them talk. We can't get them out, and they won't come out. What shall we do with them? For 8 days, every single day, we heard the same tune, the same conversation. On the 8 days, we heard them say that they can't go in, they won't come out. What shall we do with them? Let's put a firebomb and let them burn. The people decided to give themselves up. So we marched out of the bunker, and of course, on the way we saw burned houses already, and we were concentrated into a field next to the Jewish hospital, and there on the floor, of course, whatever goods we had with us, took it along, and here I met my father. who related to me. Who related to me that this family bunker was discovered on the third day of the action. And while they were marching towards the railroad station, my oldest brother was trying to escape and he was shot. My father succeeded to hide himself behind a door. And when the group went by, of course, he was discovered. He was brought to that field where I had met him. Of course, it was August, hot. The sun was burning, no food and no drinks. We lay on the grounds. But the third or fourth day, they start to call up different occupations. I was with a group of the doctors, and when they called occupations, of course, I went to the doctors. I wanted my father to come with me. So I went up to the Gestapo man and told him that I want to take my father with the group. In my naivete, he asked me, is your father a doctor? He said, no. All I got is a smack in the face, a push in the stomach. I was never to see my father again. And we were marched off to the railroad station, where the cattle cart was already prepared for us, and about 300 people in the cart prepared. We also had gotten a pail of physiological need, but you could never reach it. It was so tightly packed that you had to go through all the people in order. But you know, it's funny, if you can say so funny, that I didn't need to. Well, all the time we were traveling in the cattle carts, not I, but many of us stopped physiological needs all completely. And we started to run. There was about 300 people in a cattle cart, surrounded by the Germans, Lithuanians, and Ukrainians, all those who walked right along with the Germans. From time to time, we had shooting. The people who tried to escape from that little window, some of them succeeded, joining the partisan. Some of them were killed while trying to escape. I really don't know how long we were traveling, but we traveled day and night, no water and no food. Tightly packed, and I say no physiological needs at all. It was impossible to reach the place. If you needed to, you couldn't reach it. It was so tightly packed. At one traveled, I don't know how long it was, 3 days or 4 days. It lost track of time as well. We came to a stop. And the doors were open, and we heard some people coming out, not from when the car that I was not open. We just heard it and looked through the window, and we stayed there. We heard like the cars were taking off the train, people crying and screaming. It took about 12 hours, and we started again on our journey. Through that little window that I had stayed in and saw it, we saw that it was the camp of Treblinka. Cars from the train were taken off. People from there were taken to the infamous camp of Treblinka, of course, and were executed. I don't know again how long we traveled after, but again, day and night, we came to a stop and had to be fast out of the cars, marched off to another camp, and it was by now infamous camp of Camp Majdanek. You must understand it was August. It was very hot. The sun was burning, no water, forget about food, and staying on the grounds and knowing that this was like a dead product. And we stayed on the ground, whatever little packages of clothes we still had with us, no food, actually no water, no nothing. The sun was burning. At one point, a group of Germans rode in on horses and grabbed a child of mother's arms, threw it in the air, and shot it. I don't know how long we were staying on the camp in Majdanek. Time didn't change for us at all. Day and night, the same story. At one point, I saw a man crawling on the grounds and trying to reach the place that I was in. When he came closer, I recognized that it was a man who escaped from Warsaw and came to Bialystok, stayed in my house, and he told me, whatever occupation they call, say you are it. Nobody survives Majdanek, especially women. And he reported to me that my two sister-in-laws, and their children were indeed executed in Majdanek. So again, he repeated several times, whatever occupation they call, say you are it. Nobody survives Majdanek, especially women. And so we stayed there, and I don't know how long time it mattered to us at all. And then one day they called out different occupations, and again, I went with the doctors group, and we marched to the railway station. Again, cars were prepared, the train, and we were traveling. Again, I don't know how long we traveled. We came to a stop, it opened up, and it has to be fast in fast tempo. We went out to another camp, it's called Camp Brzeźin. Camp Brzeźin turned out to be not a annihilation camp, but just a concentration camp indeed. Here we were employed. The women were working in the tailor's department, so to speak, and the men were working in different occupations. Here, we marched off. We still had our little packages of clothes that we dragged with us all the way into the camp, and marched to the appel place. 5 people deep in a row, and they were assigned to the barracks. The barrack was a long barrack, in the middle of which was a so-called stove that was never lit, from red bricks. On both sides of the so-called stove were bunks, 3-story high. Every bunk had a sack of straw and an army blanket and a pillow. You were not allowed to go in the barracks, not until late at night when it was already dark. They got up early morning when the stars were still in the sky, and on the appel place, 5 people deep, and assigned to different kinds of walks. I was assigned to work in a barrack where we were sewing buttons we assumed to the German soldiers' uniforms that were on the Siberian front. Why did we think that? Because the uniforms were white, and we had to sew on buttons on those uniforms. We didn't know whether it was a quota or not, but whatever we had done, it was already dark when we came out again on the appel place, 5 people deep in a row, and here people who did not fulfill the quota had been leashed as many times as they were short in making the quota. Many of them, after being lashed, never got up. They were taken to the forest where they were buried. They were not allowed to go into the barracks until it was very dark. So before we went into the barracks again, we were given the so-called dinner. By rotation, the inmates would go to the kitchen and bring a kettle full of soup, and if you were lucky to get it from the bottom, you'll find an undescripted piece of some vegetables, potatoes, whatever it was. 5 people deep in a row. They stayed there, the food was distributed, and again, till dark. When it was dark, we were allowed to go back into the barracks. And about, I don't know, it was still dark outside, the stars were still in the sky, waking up in the morning to the appel again, the morning appel, and assigned to work. And here we got also called breakfast, which was distributed by the inmates. It was 2 pounds bread. It was always stale and always green. And it was for 4 inmates. And you got bitter, hot coffee, brought from the kitchen also by the inmates, distributed and up again to work, and repeated, of course, over and over for weeks. Sickness was spreading very much because no food and no clinic, and the commander of the camp decided they had to have a hospital. People were dying and being sick. So, again, one of the hospitals was built with 3 departments. The first one was for people who were just tired and exhausted from walking, from not having any food, and stayed in the hospital a few days and then went back to work. The middle one was for people already who had some contagious sicknesses, like typhus, pleuritis, and all kind of deadly sicknesses, and stayed in the second one. The third one was already department was for people who were close to death. There they stayed a few days, and from there on, they're taken into the woods where they were buried. The first victim of typhus in Brizhin was the sort of my adopted parents, the woman of the doctor with whom I had so far survived in the bunkers and then at work as well. She was the first victim to die a normal death. And you know what? We envied her. We envied her that she had died. She doesn't have to suffer anymore. We all knew that in the end we'll all be dying either from hunger or from sicknesses. But naturally, it was very popular to get sick and be in the hospital. If you recovered, you came back to work. If not, you are buried in the forest nearby. At one point, the commander of the camp realized that it can't go on like this because people were sick of contagious sicknesses, and he had to do something about it. So the group of doctors had received some pills or medication of some sort to give to the inmates as well. And of course, lice were eating us up. From time to time, we had to go to the Entlausung to change our clothes and get different clothes, but it didn't take long for them also to become full of lice and sicknesses, especially typhus was spread galore. This kind of life was going on until February of 1944. In February of 1944, there was a proclamation that Brizhin was to be liquidated and will be taken deeper into Germany because the Russian front was coming. And they didn't want to be caught by the Russians by not anything to go to the Allies. And again, of course, we had nothing but the clothes that we were wearing on our back, into the cars, and traveling west. I really don't know how long we were traveling, because time didn't mean anything anymore to us. At one point we came close, and the doors were open, and here we saw by the now infamous sign, Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. But no, we were in Auschwitz-Birkenau. Alfred could have just them out of the cars. We had nothing already belonging to us. First, men separated from women, children especially separated from their parents, and into the barrack. All the women were taken in a big, big hall, completely bare, and here we undressed, and men came in and took all the body hair, shaved all the body hair, plus the heads, of course. And I still had a little picture of my family that I kept in my shoe. And I figured if you're going to the gas chambers, it wouldn't make any difference. But maybe we are not, and then I still have the picture of my family. I still left it in the shoe. We were stripped naked, as I say, and shaved from all the body hair and into the chambers. Not knowing whether it was gas chambers or really showers. It turned out that the whole transport from Brizhin was taken into the showers. Nobody was guessed there. However, we walked in one entrance and came out the second one, and I didn't have my shoes, nor did I have the little picture that I kept of my family. Everything had to be done in a very fast tempo. Wherever you could grab a skirt or blouse or two blouses or skirts, two left shoes or two right shoes, it didn't matter. Then among ourselves we exchanged and somehow we dressed ourselves and moved on to the barracks. We were assigned to the barracks, the same as I described before. In the middle was the red stove that was never lit and bunks on both sides. You were not allowed to go in the barrack while waiting we weren't assigned to walk yet. And all day long, of course, outside, burning sun, we had the appel took place 5 people deep. And from time to time, the by now infamous Dr. Mengele would come and take out whomever he wanted to. It was the blonde ones or the brunette ones or the big ones or the small ones, it didn't matter. So everyone, by ostrich politic, tried to be the fifth one in the row. So maybe if I don't see him, he won't see me. Needless to say, then whoever he took out never returned. And the barracks was just as I described before, the long oven, so-called oven was never lit, of red bricks, and the bunks on both sides of the stove. It was the first, we were all called in isolation. We didn't walk. We'll have to go to appel in the morning, appel in the evening, after the food was distributed. And the block elders, they also were inmates, actually, but bad girls. And very many times they took out their nerves on us and beat us to death. From time to time, the famous Dr. Mengele would come and take out some people, so he tried to be the fifth in the column, so maybe you don't see him, maybe he won't see you. The men that came from the Blizzard transport were on the next field in Auschwitz-Birkenau. The doctor with whom I sort of adopted this family was a dermatologist, and venereal sicknesses was very much spread among the SS men in Auschwitz. And he took care of them, sort of. So from time to time, he would get an extra portion of soup or another piece of bread. And by risking his life, he would take it and put it under the electric wires for me to go and get some. He was risking his life to help me. I was risking my life by getting it for myself. He did it for me. He was receiving a little bit of more bread, a little bit of both, because he treated the Germans, and this is how he got it. Even, Auschwitz was very cold in the wintertime. Even a pair of slacks he smuggled in under the electric wires by risking his life in order to get it to me. We didn't walk there. There was isolation. We still were in isolation. Then, at one point, they called us up, and it was the only thing that we still had that was our own, was our name. This too was to be taken away from us. And we became numbers. I had A for Auschwitz, 15215. This. Okay. We became numbers. My number is A for Auschwitz, 15215. And from then on, we were addressed by the numbers. And of course, we felt some changes will take place. And sure enough, we were assigned now to different walks, separated with the friends that we had made during the isolation in the camps. And I was assigned to a job with another group into another field. It was called Frauenkonzentrationslager, which means women's concentration camp. And don't ask me why, because we came from a women's concentration camp anyway. In a way, I was assigned to work in a big barrack. Instead of the bunks, we had tables at which we had to make little baskets from stripes of rubber. We came a little later. The places up closer, away from the door, were already occupied. I and another girl from my hometown kept together, and we sat at the end of the table as the door constantly was open, and we couldn't make the quota. Now, can you imagine in these circumstances, the forelady, who was also an inmate, of course, I don't know, but I reminded her of a daughter or a sister, whatever. She came up, she says, you won't be able to make, in this seat, you won't be able to make the quota. And not making the quota means a death sentence. So she took me, and I took my girlfriend that we were with higher up to be away from the door, closer to the place where she put sometimes, once in a while, a fire into the stove to keep it warm. And would you believe, I don't know, but I reminded her of a child or a sister. At one point, she organized some potatoes, the poor lady, and she baked it in the oven. And she gave me to drink the salted hot water. I cannot describe to you what it tasted like at the time. No, the best wines, the best cocktails never taste as good now as the water, salted hot water at the time. I don't know what I reminded her of, but she took me under her wing and maybe got upstairs there, was watching over me so I can survive. Now I had made my quota, it was good. Not only that, she was a forelady, and she decided, all the foreladies were invited to go to Auschwitz proper to witness a concert performed by the musician inmates in camp. She insisted that she wants to take me with her. But how can I take you? She says, you look like a walking skeleton. No hair, no flesh on my body, and pale. Well, how can I do it? But she was so determined to take me with her. And she organized somehow, I don't know how, a scarf on my head, red paper to put on my cheeks so it looked a little more human-like. And I went with her to that concert in Auschwitz proper. Of course, the inmates, Jewish and non-Jewish musicians had performed. I was with her at that concert. All the musicians after the concert were taken to the crematoria and done away with. Now, I was walking there, and at one point, some of us were taken out and assigned to a different walk. It was called Frauenkonzentrationslager, with another camp within Auschwitz. And here I was assigned to go out of camp and dig holes, supposing for amelioration to put in. Coming out of camp, a group of inmates were standing there and singing some song to help us go to work. And we were accompanied naturally by the assessment and dogs, the German shepherds, who were taught to kill. And we were digging holes in the ground there in order to put amelioration. It was called JCC. At one point, I said to my inmates, I can't go and I have to rest because I can't dig anymore. She said, well, the minute you try to sit down, they'll send the dogs after you, and the dogs were taught to kill. I did sit down. It was well meant for me to survive. The dog did come up, but took off my shoe, didn't touch my foot. And the girl says, how will you go back forward now? Without a shoe, one shoe on, one shoe off. Well, I was in the last straw, of course, coming back to camp, at which point the inmates were staying there and greeting us with some songs. And of course, I had one shoe off and one shoe on, I was the last in the row. I was here again taken out to perform another job, which is the same dish, the metal plate that we ate from, washed ourselves from. I had to clean up the toilets. I walked like this a whole night through, and it's hard to describe to you how I felt and how I smelled when I came into the barrack. I approached my block eldest and asked her to allow me to stay in the barrack, not to go to work. So I'll wash myself, I'll regain my strength, and I'll be able to work. All I got from her is a slap in the face, and I lost my 4 front teeth. And she says, no, you cannot stay in the barrack. You don't want to go to work. What shall I do with you? She sent me to the Revier. Revier was like a death sentence. Nobody returned from the Revier. I did. I had no choice. I said, okay, send me to the Revier. And it was meant for me to survive. I came to the Revier, and again, an inmate was in charge. She took me under her wing, and she says, it's okay, we'll build you up a little bit, we won't keep you too long, you will regain a little strength, you'll go back to work. And sure, that's what it was. She let me wash myself and change the clothes, and gave me a little more food. The ration was assigned to us, and I stayed there for 10 days. Nobody survived the Revier for 10 days. I did. And she said to me again, Dr. Mengele is coming. The rumors that he's coming. And he'll take the ones who are here the longest. Of course, you are here the longest, you'll be the first one to go. So you have to leave. Well, I recuperated already. So she gave me a piece of paper with which I went to the warehouse and got myself a pair of shoes. And the first time I wore a concentration camp uniform, you know, the blue and gray stripes. Shoes were very important because we stand on our feet so long. And I got myself a beautiful pair of shoes. But I wanted to show you, it was meant for me to survive. Wherever I went, I had people who helped me, inmates without knowing me, and yet it was God's hand over me. So I got shoes, I got a coat, and I was assigned to another barrack, which we went. There was another barrack, and I was assigned to go to work in another barrack to make some baskets for the airplanes or whatever it was. And from then, I worked there till the liquidation of Auschwitz, which was taking place in January. They gave us a choice that Auschwitz, they can stay in Auschwitz or go deeper into Germany. The Germans were terribly afraid of to be captured by the Russians. They wanted to go deeper into Germany in order to be captured, though, by the Allies. Well, we didn't believe them, that they will leave Auschwitz the way it is in order for the world to see what had happened in here. But as I say, they gave us a choice. We could stay in Auschwitz or go deeper into Germany. The majority went out of Auschwitz on the so-called, by now, the death march, where 40% of the people who went to the death march had perished. And Auschwitz was liberated 4 days after we had left. 21st of January, 1945, Auschwitz was liberated. We left on the 18th. And I still had 2 years more of being in different camps until we met the Allies deeper into Germany. And here the Germans as well wanted to be captured by the Allies, not the Russians. We went deeper into Germany, and 40% of the people on the death march had perished while marching. And we already reached the Allies, and the story was that we were liberated by the Russians. The Germans were very much afraid of the Russians, yet it happened that the ones who liberated us were the Russians. But the Russians did not believe that Jewish girls had survived without cooperating with the Germans. And here my knowledge of Russians was very handy. And I explained it to them. Look at us. Do we look like cooperators? Well, I persuaded them. They believed us. They said, you can go into the house and wash yourself and take. I took off my dress that I wore. It was made out of an army blanket. I'm not exaggerating. It was so full of lice that it walked on its own. The German woman who was there on the farm was rather glad to help us than the Russian soldier. And I'm sure you heard what the Russian soldier had done to the Germans and to the German women especially. And she gave us anything she had in the house, which wasn't much, but I took off that dress, so underwear, and we went out. There was a little house there, and she said, 10 girls from Poland that kept together on the march. And the Russian commander says, there's a little house, you can go in there and lock yourself in, because you don't know, the Russian soldiers don't know the difference between Jewish girls and German girls. They're the girls. So what do you do? I says, okay, we'll find something. There was a big sign, typhus, and put it on the door, so they were to keep the soldiers out. And sure enough, they kept them out, and afterwards we were allowed to go into the little town, the Brandenburg it was called, and get to the German houses. And again, they wanted rather to help us than the Russian soldiers. So some clothes and food, and we built ourselves up. The Russians again opened up a kitchen for us, but no control. Don't just picture yourself for 2 or 3 years having not enough food, very little of it, and now have food as much as you want. There were 4 girls from my hometown that we kept together. One of our girls had overeaten, and she died of overeating. We had to leave her behind. The Russians didn't give us any restrictions. They put food on the tables and you could take as much as you want. And we didn't know how to restrict ourselves, how dangerous it was after 2 years of hunger to fool yourself out. As I said, one of my hometown girls we had left behind. The Russians again said, we are going to Russia. There's a train going down to Russia. If you want to come with us, fine. We'll go via Bialystok. Bialystok was liberated a whole year before in August of 1944. I was liberated in August of 1945. And we said, no, thank you. We'll see what we can do. And the three of us now went deeper into Germany, to another little town, Brandenburg. And here we went into a German home, again, who was happy to see us than the Russian soldiers. And we tried to get some way of going back to Poland with the hope that maybe somebody survived. I especially believed that my brother, who was sent out to Russia, he might have survived. I didn't think of anybody else of the family. Unfortunately, he didn't hear. We stayed. The Russians thought, what can we do for you? The first thing was already food and clothes. And they somehow organized some food. I want to tell you that the three of us, plus the hostess, the German hostess, would consume a whole lamb, 10-pound potatoes, and in one sitting. And we survived it too. So at one point, the Russian soldiers brought us clothes and things. I still have a pair of scissors that one of the Russian soldiers gave me to cut my nails. And they said to me, there's a train, it was about a month later, and he said, there's a train going via Bialystok, deep in the Soviet Union. We were staying there for a week. You can come with us. And if you decide to go deep into Russia, we'll give you a farm, you'll become Soviet citizens, or you can remain in Bialystok. As I said, Bialystok was liberated already a year before. So the three of us decided to go and see what was. I still had hope that my brother, who was sent off to Siberia, that he had survived, because there was a division of Russian soldiers combined only from Polish citizens, and I hoped that maybe he had survived. So usually a journey would take probably 3 days. We traveled about 4 weeks, almost about a month, and we came to Bialystok. Sure enough, the train passed. As I say, Bialystok was liberated a year before. There was already a Jewish organization, a Jewish committee. There were people who were in hiding, people who were in the partisans returned to the city. And there was a house and buggy. We already had some clothes that the Russians provided us with in bags, put it on the buggy, and we went into town. And as I came to the Jewish committee, it was already organized there, and they said, it's okay, we'll see that you can, if you want to stay in Bialystok, we'll organize a place for you to stay, the 3 girls. And they did. And as we were walking in the street, I said, maybe I'll see a familiar face. And indeed, I find somebody who was a neighbor of ours who survived as a partisan in the woods. And I asked her, maybe my brother was here passing by. He says, as a matter of fact, your brother was one of the liberators of Bialystok. And we begged him, take off the uniform, put on civil clothes, and stay. He says, why should I stay? None of my family survived. What is my life? I don't want to. I'll go and I'll fight. So he went. Later on, of course, I found out at the Red Cross he was killed on the front fighting the Germans. Okay, we stayed in Bialystok, and slowly, we became sort of a normal life. I met my husband there to be, and I got married in February of 1946, 1946, so then in February I got married, and we left Poland a month, 2 months later, and via Czechoslovakia, we went into Austria, and you know about the DP camps that was formed by the American Red Cross, and from there, in 1949, we came to the United States. Thank you very much for listening. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
so much, Bluma, for sharing your story. Before I open it up to the floor for just a couple of questions, because I think we have a couple of minutes, I would love to conclude with you sharing what you would like to pass on to future generations, to everybody who's here with us. Why is hearing stories such as yours so important, hearing them either in first accounts or hearing them on video or...
When I met my husband, I never told him about my experiences. I didn't talk about it till 1979. In 1979, there was a professor at the Northwestern University who wrote a book denying the Holocaust. It was only 40 years after the liberation. And I said to my husband, look at that. I'm still here. And they told me it didn't happen. What shall we do? I said, you know what you should do? You should talk and tell them the truth. At the time, there was a correspondent, Bialystok, who approached me. There will be a panel. You and the president of the Black University, and a judge, and a priest, and a rabbi. And I want you to be there and tell the story. Can you do that? It was the first time I was exposed to tell about my experiences. And since then, I haven't stopped. Anybody who asks to talk about my experiences, I never, ever say no. Because I believe that maybe in a small way, although sometimes you go very pessimistic looking around the world, but maybe in a small way we can prevent it from reoccurring. So millions of people wouldn't die because I kept quiet. So from then on, I keep talking about my experience. And as I said, I believe that maybe in a small way we can prevent it from reoccurring. Thank you.